What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and the other great host of this show, Nick. And Nick, draft weekend is wrapped up. The Rams have added 14 players via the draft. They have another 10 that they've added as unrestricted or undrafted free agents, rather. But Nick, first and most importantly, how are you, my good brother?
Oh, good. Crazy weekend. A lot of different talks around the league. Everybody talking about how, what teams won and what teams did a bad job. And I feel like the Rams have kind of skated somewhere right in the middle of that, where they're not getting a lot of talk outside of people that aren't Rams fans. So make of that what you will. But I'm good.
I think if we had a draft that was similar to the Colts, the Bucks, or the Eagles, we would be very boisterous in terms of how we feel the draft went. We would be like, oh, A plus. We got Jalen Carter, we got Keely Ringo, we got the whole Georgia front. We drafted Kalijah Cansey, we drafted Julius Brents and Anthony Richardson. Like, those are three situations to where we feel like those teams almost essentially followed what we had laid out in terms of the big board verbatim, which was strange. I was following along with those three teams, and they were selecting everybody that lived within our big board, the top 120, 130 players or so. And, as you're following along with the Rams' big board, you're like, okay, where are these guys? Where's Steve Avila? Where's Byron Young? Right? Where's Kobe Turner? Where do they all sit? Right? Where did they fit within our big board? Did we preview these players? So I was constantly analyzing that stuff as the draft was going on. Was, let's keep up with the big board. Let's see where everybody falls, but let's see if there's any players that we specifically scouted that are going to be drafted by the Rams. And luckily, there were 3 or 4 within Kobe Turner, Stenson Bennett. I think one of the undrafted free agents that they signed were somebody that lived within our big board. Steve Avila was on there. So I think that there was a lot to unpack, but just an extremely, extremely eventful draft weekend, even starting Friday night. Obviously the trades, what the Texans did on night one, the Colts drafting Anthony Richardson. It's just a lot of excitement throughout the league. But I mean, Nick, the way that the Rams do this is so unorthodox, which is why I was spending so much time in front of my TV yesterday. You and I both, 7 hours yesterday was the full length of day 3, and the Rams ended up making 11 picks on day 3. So let's just call it the longest possible weekend in the history of football. It was a long-awaited process, but they just seemed to be kicking the can down the road consistently with the 5 or 6 trade backs that they had. They ended up trading up to draft Zach Evans at 215, but for the most part, it seemed like their methodology was instilled beforehand. Let's support Aaron Donald. Let's get Matthew Stafford some protection. Cooper Kupp, additional weapons in the wide receiver room. Let's get a tight end. So I feel like if you're trying to build a team from the inside out and you're trying to reinstill some foundational pieces and a future core, which is really what we were kind of harping on. We were like, let's stay away from shiny toy. Let's focus on future core. And Nick, no skill players drafted until what was it, 176? We didn't take any skill players. So,
well, I mean, I guess Stenson Bennett doesn't count as a skill player.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we previewed him. We previewed him at the very bottom of our draft list like a while ago. But
yep.
I mean, you have to look at it like they wanted. They were going more for quantity because they kept getting more and more picks. So I think they want to bring in a lot of people to see where they'll kind of fret and then make the final roster cuts and whatnot. But they must have been excited with the amount of prospects that were on the table because they brought in a lot more picks than we had previously thought.
Yeah, so initially 11, and then we strategized with the Rams Brothers official gambling team, and they said, knowing the Rams, knowing that they only have 45 players signed under current contract and need to fill out 90 by roughly June, July. We said, yeah, let's bump up that line to 13 and a half. So we were like, okay, let's kind of straddle that line of maybe 13, 14 picks, considering the fact that they need to bring in how many undrafted players, 15, 16. So there was a lot to do over the weekend, I think, long story short. And it started with Steve Avila. It was Steve Avila. Sorry, what'd you say? Go ahead.
No, I just loved that they went with an offensive line first.
Yeah.
That just showed me that they were worried about core. You know what I mean? Like let's get somebody in here that's not exciting, that is just a strong, can be helping Stafford make his plays, let the plays develop downfield.
Yeah.
So I mean that to me was a good start. I've been begging for them to take an offensive lineman for like 3-4 years now, in like the first in like first, second round. So this was nice.
This was, and it's not only nice because they stemmed away from a shiny toy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They stemmed away from a Tyler Scott or a Cedric Tillman or whomever it could be that they would want to reach at 36. And apparently there was news that they were looking to trade up into the end of the first round to potentially take an offensive player. So that methodology was still very much in place. Like the shiny toy thought process was still in everybody's heads. But the strengths of this player, specifically Steve Avila, an interior offensive lineman from TCU, obviously that team got their ass kicked against Georgia in SoFi Stadium in the national championship, but the Rams ended up with essentially 3 players from that team. And in knowing Steve Avila a little bit, his real name is Esteban. He's a player that is much bigger in terms of a starting caliber guard in the NFL. He's consistently looking for work. He plays with a legitimate attitude and swagger. I think that's the kind of guy that you need up front, especially when you take into consideration who Brian Allen is, somebody that McVay refers to as overly aggressive, even verbally he could be overly aggressive, but physically you need that kind of characteristic too. And if you go all the way back to the conversation we had with Jordan about a month and a half ago, she talked about how Brian Allen could potentially be on the chopping block. It could be somebody that because of durability, they're looking to move away from. Like this is a kid that started at least one game at 4 different offensive line positions over the last 3 seasons, every single spot except left tackle. Most of his career college snaps came out of center. And he has legitimate position flexibility. So it's somebody that Ryan Wendell, as soon as they got him on the phone, you're excited about the fact that you have legitimate position versatility. You've had some guys in the past with the offensive line, whether it's Ty Nsekhe or Ode Oboshi, that are older, longer in the tooth, that don't necessarily have that versatility, that weren't drafted highly, that weren't highly coveted. And, the fact that he had no holding penalties called against him his senior year is really impressive. Of course, the fact that he is maybe not overly explosive. He has a tendency to forget his feet once he's engaged with his upper half. Those are all kind of things that you can coach out of him. His base is there, his lower body too, his access point and his leverage points aren't necessarily all interconnected at all times. He doesn't have great arm length, but I think in terms of hand placement, that could get better. There's a lot of things that you could coach out of him, but I think from a base, a foundational standpoint, you brought in somebody that could be a starter on day one, Nick. Like his ability to really kind of get into the second level, to pull, to be able to kind of just evolve as an interior blocker still needs to be there. But I feel like in terms of just having a foundational player, an interior offensive lineman on your roster that you can count on is so important based on what's happened over the last couple of years.
I mean, you got somebody that is bigger than average. His feet work isn't ideal, and his wingspan isn't where you want it to be. But it's somebody that you can work with. My favorite thing about this pick, too, is that they tried to trade up unsuccessfully. So they just took the best player on the board. And also just I know every Rams fan was just debating in their head, okay, it's Saturday. Will Levis is still around.
Yeah.
Can
Hendon
we
Hooker's still around.
Yeah. Can we please make sure that we do not get this guy and have to worry about, him playing backup and then he's our starting QB in 3 years or whatever, because he's just a whole nother can of worms. And then they were able to do something later, almost exactly like that kind of brought back all those frustrations. But at this point in the draft, at this point of the day, it was nice to see them. I was very, very happy with that pick. It was a solid, boring pick. Yeah, safe, boring, whatever you want to call it. It was what you wanted to see. It was not a shiny toy.
Yes, safe, solid, foundational pick, and that's what I feel like we needed. And then you go to round 3, 77 overall, Byron Young, an edge rusher out of Tennessee, not to be confused with Byron Young out of Alabama, who is an interior defensive lineman. Byron Young, Nick, everybody's like, oh, he's 25. Oh, he's in JUCO. Oh, he was a manager at Circle K. He missed a year due to the COVID thing, messed up a lot of these players. A lot of these guys are 24, 25 because of the COVID year. But this is a player that very, very large in frame. Like, he doesn't have the ideal height in terms of an edge rusher, but he has really long arms and really massive hands. In terms of his first step quickness, his ability to squeeze gaps, it's all in there. His ability to get into these blocks and lean into them and really just be kind of skillful in terms of how he could actively use his hands, deconstruct from blocks and shake free. He's pretty skillful in that regard just because of his overwhelming athleticism. Like, he can really kind of catch and dispose of blockers and their wrists and cleverly track the ball in the run game. He doesn't necessarily set the edge that well, but he has experience in terms of lining up all over a defensive front. He showed up to work every single day and played in all 54 of the last 4 seasons, all 54 games over the last 4 seasons for Tennessee. But like we mentioned, 25 years old, lack of experience at a high level, wasn't a top recruit coming out of high school, and doesn't necessarily have that desired length in terms of height to be an ideal edge rusher. There were some scouts that came out and said, in terms of the point of attack, his physicality, he's an older player. Scouts don't necessarily feel like he has the framework for an every down player. But like, if you compare him to the last edge rusher from Tennessee that the Rams had taken in Leonard Little, that's a guy that went over 10 sacks 4 times in his career. He went up to 14 and a half sacks this one year. Obviously not the exact same type of player, but somebody that when they talked about with Les Snead, Aaron Donald, the meeting where they sat down and said, we just want guys who care. That was Aaron Donald's line. We want guys who care. This is a guy who's been through everything. He was a manager at Circle K. His ambition is ridiculous. That could be somebody, the Kurt Warner story all over again. Maybe he ends up on a cereal box one day. Maybe not the case, but seems like somebody who could be a very good rotational edge rusher in a series of players that don't necessarily have a defined role yet. There's a log jam in terms of bodies, but there isn't necessarily players that have outright owned that role yet.
I know a lot of people want to say 25 years old as like kind of like a knock on somebody. But to me, honestly, like, I think you're getting somebody with more maturity, somebody that's kind of been through more, like, knowing that he was a manager at Circle K. Like, on paper, you're like, okay, what does that add? Like, really nothing. Well, I mean, honestly, it gives him a lot of retrospective of the world outside of football. And now knowing that, like, that's like that's where he was.
Yeah.
So he can come into the LA Rams, a football team, something he's wanted to do his whole life, and make a huge impact, like, pretty much immediately, because of our depth chart and how, like, little people that we have on it. I mean, I think that's kind of a big deal, in my opinion. That's kind of the outside things that you're not really thinking about that could have, like, big time effects. I mean, essentially the Kurt Warner effect. And then I mean,
I was just going to say perspective is so important, right? Like, you never want to go back to Circle K. You never want to be a manager in a convenience store again. You'll do anything in Los Angeles, be best friends with Aaron Donald, develop the pass rush bag, be more fundamentally sound, get yourself on the field so that you could avoid that lifestyle once again.
Yeah. And then moved to round 3, 89 overall, Kobe Turner, somebody that I was able to preview. That was one that we had on our draft board.
Yeah, this is your boy. All Kobe's deserve to play in LA.
Hell yeah, they do. We got so many. Ridiculously balanced, really good play recognition, has above average flexibility, play strength. When he makes contact with an opposing offensive lineman, like, how he has the ability to extend and punches off blocks, pretty deep bag of tricks to keep himself in position to make a play. Impressive short area quickness to operate in constricted spaces. He's small framed for an interior player, but has a more mature frame and plenty of muscle. His teammates and coaches rave about his work ethic and drive, just typical for Kobe's on and off the field, consistent backfield production since entering the starting lineup. I mean, this is, to do the homework like we have done and to see it come to fruition with a player like Kobe Turner, it makes it a little extra special for me and you. I don't know.
Oh, well, I think so. I mean, it's a player that we originally previewed. It's a player that the Rams met with from Wake Forest. It's a player that has plenty of other talents outside of football. Have you heard him sing? Can he sing? Do you know how to ram it? I would love that, Kobe. I'm sure he could sing better than I could. In terms of just impressive short area quickness, Like that stuff, if you have that as an intangible, like everything else kind of falls into place. Everything else that Aaron Donald can help you develop, everything else that Eric Henderson can help you develop, operating in constricted spaces as an interior defensive lineman is very, very difficult to do. If you could do it as a ridiculously balanced player with really good play recognition and above average size, that's how you do it, with smarts, with intelligence, with a well-developed bag of tricks. And I think he's able to do that. And I think people viewed him as a tweener just because of his length, right? Scouts think he's going to have a tougher time against offensive linemen who have longer arms. If you're a 3-tech, you're going to deal with some of that outside blocking. You're going to deal with some of those tackles, some of those guys with longer arms. I think if you get a little inconsistent with your fundamentals and your hand placement, like you can fix that. It's very, very fixable. It's very, very coachable. He wasn't a starter in that one season at the FBS level, but and he only registered 2 sacks. But again, Nick, as you mentioned, as soon as he entered the starting lineup, it seemed like everything changed. And he's going to be 24 over the weekend, but not necessarily something that we're concerned about. I like that the Rams drafted mature players, guys that over the next 4 seasons, 24, 25, 26, and 27, Nick, is not like old. It's not an old man for the NFL. Like that is the prime of the NFL, right? Like, if you played at 27, 28, and potentially earn yourself another contract, that's the best possible place you could find yourself as an NFL player. So like 25, even 25, 26, 27, and 28, like these guys still have an opportunity to make a name for themselves even after that first rookie contract. So I love that that Kobe Turner's nickname is the Conductor. That to me is an all-time great nickname. And it's because of his ability to play instruments and sing, but hopefully he can conduct a little bit of business on the defensive line too.
They say like when you can develop that part of your brain that can like understand sheet music, you kind of like open up like a whole nother like octave. The Conductor is also just like, how has that not been used before? Like, like that is genius. It just sounds like, oh, the Conductor with a tackle. Like, oh my God, I love it. Should we move on to the most controversial pick now?
Yeah. I'll let you take it away on Stenson.
Okay, so I had a buddy. He had $500 on Stetson Bennett to go undrafted. It would have paid out exactly $500. And
oh God,
round 4, 128th overall. He was plus 1400th to go in the 4th round. QB Stetson Bennett. Everybody wants to talk about how he's so mature and, he's got good feet and a great arm, leadership capabilities. I just watched him get arrested. Like he's on the smaller size. He looks like Baker Mayfield. Could have been taken later. I mean, my gripe on him truly is less on Stetson Bennett as a quarterback and more on the Rams front office for having to get him in the 4th round. Like,
I understand.
He's been there.
And that was
negative money to go undrafted.
That was my instant reaction. That was absolutely my instant reaction. Was okay. There's other prospects that we like better. He probably could have went later. He's 25 years old. It was recently
Ringo picked up by this point.
Yeah, but I mean, wait, what'd you say?
Was Ringo picked by this point?
Ringo was picked at this point.
Okay.
Yes, Ringo was. I think he was drafted earlier in that round. He was drafted right at the top of the 4th round with the 105th pick by the Eagles. And Stetson Bennett was drafted with the 128th pick in the 4th round by the Rams. And right before him, Nick, went Jake Haener, which is a quarterback from Fresno State's going to sit right behind Derek Carr in New Orleans. They both went to Fresno State. It's the perfect pairing. To me, that would have been the perfect situation to draft Jake Haener, except the fact that he was drafted 1 pick before. And I think that was a player that the Rams really highly coveted because everybody below Jake Haener was Stetson Bennett, Clayton Tune, Aiden O'Connell, Jaron Hall, which were a few prospects that we felt like we liked a lot better. But if you really dig into Stetson Bennett, Nick, cheap version of Baker Mayfield for 4 whole years. Didn't necessarily know if he was going to get an opportunity. Got one in Los Angeles right behind Matthew Stafford. It's a Georgia Bulldogs quarterback room now.
Deal with it.
Yeah. So I think from that perspective, like you're bringing him into the perfect situation, and in somebody that's 25 years old that has a lot of experience running a pro style offense that played in the national championship, back-to-back national championship wins, is going to run the shit out of the scout team. He's going to do a great job as a backup quarterback, and he could be a lifelong backup quarterback in the NFL and potentially win you a few games. So in doing that, like, yeah, maybe he was overdrafted, but I think the Rams had some insight in terms of how the quarterback board was going to unfold. If there was a run going on later in round 5, early into round 6, they knew that they had to make a pick a quarterback, and they only had one on the roster. It's like you had to get one.
Yeah, so definitely better than LinkedIn boy.
Sure.
I forget his
100%.
name. I can't believe I forget his name.
Wolford.
Wolford, thank you.
The Wolf
John
on
Wolford,
Wall
like
Street.
so much better than Wolfie, like insanely. And I still can't believe that there were people that are apparently credited journalists who thought Wolford deserved to be a starter in the NFL. But I don't hate him as a backup. I really don't. Like I think he can provide, and like on the scout team, if they're playing like a Lamar Jackson type, then he can run around and like do like power I formation or whatever. And like great. Now we have a backup quarterback that has been in big moments in college and all of that, and he's 25. Good. I just really believe that if you would have waited round 5, 177 overall, which they had, or round 6, 182. He's there. I really believe that he was there. And then all the reports from Jordan where he was like, the Rams are all like, or she was like, the Rams are clapping, like very happy that they found their backup. And I'm just like, plus 1400th in the 4th round. Like, who is in your ear saying, hey,
that's just information that we don't know and that Vegas can't possibly have.
I know, but like Vegas always knows. They know.
But yeah, no, you're right. So they went 161. They went Nick Hampton, which is an edge rusher. They had already drafted Byron Young, and Jaron Hall was sitting on the board at 164. He went to the Minnesota Vikings. So back with Kevin O'Connell makes a ton of sense. I mean, that was if Kevin O'Connell was still in place, that was 100% our backup quarterback.
And he deserves to have his day in Minnesota because he was so great. And you saw that when they brought in somebody else that the offense really struggled. But Nick Hampton, edge, very, very explosive. First step. Many said that the Rams were getting one of the steals of the draft in this pick, which was nice because we haven't heard that yet. Absolutely plays with his hair on fire. His pro player comp is Josh
Uche. Yeah.
Uche.
I saw that.
We all loved a few years ago as a prospect. He rarely loses sight of the football, has a really, really good lower body flexibility. He's bendy. I can relate, and he can use his ability to be nimble and in more of like a speed to power type rusher, displays the lower body flexibility to bend and make sharp cuts in his pass rush. Voted a senior captain, which is always nice. And had above average backfield production and hits 11.0 sacks in 2021.
Yeah. Year before last, he was the Appalachian State player, one that had, I think, the most sacks. Was the most sacks in Appalachian State player school history since they moved up to the FBS. So some really impressive stuff there.
Yeah. And then, on the con side, introduced new rush moves into his latest album, but he reverts back to the predictable hits, relying on speed and strength, which,
it's a good line from Dane Brugler. Yep.
Yeah. Really? That's from Dane?
Yeah, it's from Dane. Yeah, because when you rely on just your overall athleticism and you don't necessarily tap into some of the newer bags of tricks, some of the newer pass rushes, like it catches up to you in the NFL. And I think that if some of those pass rush moves aren't overly developed, if some of his counters end up getting just blocked off and he gets stopped up at the line of scrimmage, that's just because it's going to be he hasn't developed it quite yet. And it's a little bit of inconsistency from an edge rusher, and that's why these edge rushers they fell a little bit later in the draft. But it's a player that had a 3rd or 4th round grade, and we got him in the 5th round. Yeah. So it's a player that a lot of people liked. I just think he's a little bit inconsistent in terms of when you get to the next level, how great are the pass rush traits that you already have on board going to be able to be leveraged in the league? So anything incremental that he can add to his game, I feel like will be highly, highly useful for him as a developmental player. But I mean, like Nick, the edge rushers, are they going to go speed power on both sides? You're going to go like Daniel Hardy, Nick Hampton, and then you go Byron Young and Michael Hoyt. Like, is there a speed power combination on both sides that they're going to try and leverage? I think the answer to that is yes, unless there's a player that consistently merges and wants to play that weak side, similar to how Von Miller did, rushing around the right tackle consistently and is a staple within our defense, is something that I feel like we're still looking for. You got a lot of like C+, B- players for Aaron Donald to hang out with, but nobody that's like a bona fide, okay, this guy's going to be a Pro Bowler as soon as he steps onto the field.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting. I mean, really, like, I'm really, really excited to see like the kind of new look defense with.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the fact that they went, Nick, I mean, were we expecting this? Interior offensive lineman, edge rusher, interior defensive tackle, quarterback, edge rusher.
Yeah. I did literally outside of the quarterback at this point. I am like stoked on the draft.
And how about this? How about talk about another safe and sound pick? I mean, Warren McClendon Jr., an offensive lineman from University of Georgia. Yeah, the weaknesses within his player profile, I think, stem from not necessarily like personal fouls or holdings or false starts or anything like that. He suffered a minor MCL injury in the 2022 championship game, which was in December of 2022. And then I think he got into a really, really bad car accident. Like we had a couple of teammates with him. It killed one of his teammates, Devin Wilcock. One of the Georgia staffers suffered some kind of injury. And he had suffered a knee injury during the second Senior Bowl practice and missed the rest of the week, which was back in February 2023. And then he missed the combine in 2023 also. So it was like, okay, maybe this feels like a safe pick. It's a good player that played on the right side of Georgia's prolific offense. But there's some stuff there that it's very obvious in terms of why he kind of trickled down and fell into the 5th round. But he's a very, very long-armed blocker, only had 2 holding penalties in his 28 starts in the past 2 seasons. Like, he is big enough to be able to control pass rushers. The resistance is there. He's able to stay inside. He has a really good 2-hand strike. And I feel like his jabs are very, very timely. Like, he's a pretty technically sound right tackle. And I feel like when you're in that kind of situation and the way that the Rams' offensive line has unfolded in the past couple of years, like, we needed legitimate tackle depth. It's not Alaric Jackson just volunteering that he wants to go play left tackle, or Ty Nsekhe, who's 38 years old, playing left tackle. He was pulled off of the street to protect our quarterbacks last year. Like, this is very much of a player that I feel like, yeah, he saw live reps as a left tackle in a handful of games of 2022, but he's primarily a 3-year starting right tackle with 37 career starts. So Rob Havenstein, Nick, who was banged up all of last year, had to get a couple of surgeries just to clean out some stuff in the offseason. Like, give him a couple of games as a breather. And it's also insurance to Joe Noteboom. You know, if you feel like Joe Noteboom can't play, if you feel like he's unable to recover from that Achilles injury, you needed more tackle depth. And this is a player that is that exactly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I did, like, he's got jabs that can knock pass rushers off balance, like, just really like kind of creative movements, that stuff that you're going to really like be able to kind of sink your teeth in and be like, oh wow, this is a guy who's like standing out.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, up until this point, so we're now in round 5, right?
Yep.
Like halfway through round 5, and then now we're getting Davis Allen tight end. You know,
but no skill players to that point.
Right. So like, this is the point where you're like, okay, like, this is welcomed. Like, I'm ready to see the highlights for Davis Allen and see him, like, like what's going on. This was like, you felt like you were a lot more comfortable at like, it's like watching this draft now, knowing that you got a lot of like, core kind of pieces, and now you're like, all right, bring on the fun. Let's see what this guy's got.
That is exactly the methodology and mindset that I had at this point. I was like, okay, now this is the point where I tweeted yesterday, if you guys were following along, the Rams haven't drafted any skill players yet. Who do you guys like as a late round running back? Who do you guys like as a late round receiver? And this is where you go Davis Allen. They went tight end out of Clemson. I mean, if you're going to go like player comparable, he is not like the most elite blocking tight end. He's not the most elite athlete in terms of just physical traits, but he's a loose athlete and he has a really large frame, and 6'5", 245 as a dependable pass catcher with an outstanding track and adjustment and ability to finish and catch balls in the red zone. I feel like that's really important to have on your roster, and somebody that could legitimately replace Tyler Higbee one day. If it's not this season, it'll potentially be next season. He's a guy that never had more than one drop in a single season, has a career drop rate of 3.3%. He's a really, really good contested catcher. He has purposeful routes. He leverages defenders and creates passing windows. He's an adequate position blocker, and I feel like he's able to engage defenders with fundamentally sound angles, which is really, really important to have as a blocker, especially within the Rams' offense. And I feel like being a regular on kick returns and punt coverages, he logged over 500 special team snaps and 7 career tackles as a special teamer in his career. That's somebody who's going to want to step up and play right away. He's going to get snaps on special teams, and he's going to know exactly how to do it. He was voted a senior captain, was battling through injuries, but ended up playing in all 54 games over the last 4 seasons. So a very, very tough kid, Nick. This could be a staple of the Rams' offense moving forward. Like, the burst is ordinary. Like, some of his break points he leaves open to defenders. He, in terms of his tape, like, not a ton of broken tackles, not like he's not going to run by anybody, but somebody that's consistent, somebody that isn't coming off of a ton of injuries, somebody that had a 3rd, 4th round grade that end up dropping into the 5th round. I think that's an ultimate win.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, 3rd and 4th round grade. Love that. So then you feel like you're getting a steal with your first, like, true offensive weapon. Yeah. And then this is going to sound silly, but Davis Allen sounds like a great tight end.
He does. He totally does.
That name is like, ooh, Davis Allen. Let me see if I can pick him up in my fantasy league. Like,
exactly right. That. Yeah, he does. He has the tight end name for sure. So I'm encouraged. And Puka Nacua. Nick, what was the first thing you thought of when you heard that name? Was it forgetting Sarah Marshall?
It was the state fish of Hawaii. Ahua Apuana. I think I just butchered that. Yeah.
That's Puka Nacua, wide receiver out of BYU, Nick. And Nick, I want you to take this one because I know you had such a deep connection to Bobby Trees. When I feel like this kid is healthy, that's the type of player that I feel like he's going to be.
Right. I mean, my connection from Bobby Trees also came from the fact that we were both, USC guys. But yeah, BYU's cool. Smooth athlete, controlled upper strides, 6'1", 205, just pure athlete, high volume of screens, quick throws to take advantage of his vision and toughness. 5 rushing touchdowns in 2022. Stands out. Definitely stands out.
I already love this kid, man. I'm telling you, like, I love Puka Nacua already.
Yeah, I mean, like, just with the jet sweeps, the Bobby Trees, like those 2018, 2017 highlights, I felt like he was, like, always getting in rushing touchdowns. Great body control and fell when the ball is in the air, allowing to adjust the high point, catch timing and focus, help him kind of make grabs over defenders, which is big, kind of what we thought Allen Robinson would have been. Doesn't shrink from route contract and maintains his focus to secure contested catches. 2002 Boise State tape. Just check that out. Do yourself a favor.
It's a good one.
Displays crafty footwork, mid-pattern to leverage defenders out of positions or expose space in zone. Voted a senior captain, which seems to be a theme for these Rams guys. I think they're going for maturity. Has the pedigree of a competitor. NFL scout said our coaches are going to love this guy. Benefits from the older brother theory. Okay. With 3 older brothers who played high-level college football. So I think he benefits from the younger brother theory in that sense.
Well done. Well done. Yeah, I mean, like, there's not a ton of weaknesses outside of some of the injury history. He had a sprained ankle in 2022, missed the season opener, hamstring injuries, like little kind of ticky-tacky injuries, had a concussion before the Senior Bowl. I think he got pulled out of one of the practices, but he was the best player on BYU's roster. And I think they use the Robert Wood methodology in terms of, how do we develop this player at the pro level to be like Robert Woods, somebody that can use his body in space, that's going to be an asset to the offense when he does not have the ball in his hand, somebody that's going to be able to take screens, jet sweeps, quick throws across the middle, be able to absorb contact. A yard after the catch guy like Puka Nakua is him and Cooper Kupp are going to be really, really close friends over the next couple of years. I have good faith in that.
Do
and
you
then
think
Nick,
that this is somebody that could start?
Yeah, I feel that way. And then Nick, we went right after that. We went Puka Nakua at 177. Then we went 182. We went Travius Tomlinson, which is LaDainian Tomlinson's nephew. Obviously a little bit of a smaller player. He's only 5'8". I don't even think he got up to 5'8" when they measured him in the combine. But he'll be a really good slot player. Like you'll have him right in the slot. You play him up in the box, play him in the nickel, play him in the star, whatever it is that you want to refer to it in terms of the jargon that the Rams use. He's going to be the type of player that you could stick on a tight end, that you could stick on a little bit larger of a receiver that likes to play in the slot. And because of his exceptional speed, agility, and lower body explosiveness, and those sudden twitch in terms of his hips, and his ability to change direction, like that's all there. If this was a 6'1", 210-pound player, had the body of Keely Ringo, he would be a first-round pick. Like I feel like he shows a very, very developed feel for reading the play, indicators and breaks. He's very, very much on top of. He's consistent in passing windows. He accounted for 40 passes defended in 37 games over the past 3 seasons, and he only gave up 2 catches for 25+ yards in 2022 on 81 targets. So he plays much bigger than he is. Obviously has the Hall of Fame uncle. His missed tackles decreased each season he was at TCU. So Horned Frog, Travius Tomlinson is going to be a really, really tough player in this defense. And I feel like he's going to be one that can fill the Troy Hill role and contribute almost immediately.
Yeah.
So more help in terms of defensive backs is essential for this team. Just
based on his height, weight, and length, the fact that he is getting drafted at all is kind of amazing. He could struggle with matchups. Like you put him up against D-Hop and you might have a huge problem.
Oh, of course. Anybody does, right?
You could say that with most, DBs. So, yeah, works primarily on the outside, less kind of ideal experience working versus the slot. But, he stayed healthy, which is huge because of his size. He's out there every single, snap that he can be making an impact.
Yeah, I think they're just projecting that he could not be healthy in the NFL, but he stays very durable in college just because of the size. But I have a lot of faith in him. I do. Yeah. He has the feel of a player that's going to be impactful in the defense.
Yeah.
And then, Nick, we got 5 more draft picks, but we'll go through these fairly quickly. With Oshwan Mathis, edge rusher of Nebraska. We got him round 6, 189 overall. You want to take this one?
Yeah. 3rd edge rusher drafted thus far. Byron Young, Nick Hampton, the guy we just talked about. Prototypical size and length. Needs more mass. I think his stock took a hit after the transferred from TCU to Nebraska, but could have been a multitude of reasons for that.
Yeah, very stronger competition, but
transferred to Nebraska and was kind of outmatched. Not a ton of production in his final year in college. But yeah, he's friends with all the TCU guys, so that's probably it's probably a plus.
He said that he felt extremely blessed to be drafted into that situation. I think other players around the league are seeing what's happening with Georgia and the Philadelphia Eagles and are like, hey man, that could be really cool. Like I could play with all my college buddies. Oshwan found himself in this situation where he gets to play.
I think the Eagles could potentially go undefeated next year in the regular season. 100%. I'm saying that with a straight face.
And you know what? Even if their MVP caliber quarterback goes down, they're a quarterback factory. They drafted Tanner McKee out of Stanford. They had a hell of a draft, and they drafted Mojo Moro from Texas.
I want to keep the Texans as the best drafted team because I thought what they did was like so cool to get pick number 2 and 3. But I don't know. The Eagles have really made a case. But anyway,
yeah, the Eagles they did a great job.
We got a running back, Zach Evans.
Hey, we waited until round 6, 215 to draft a running back. How about that?
Yeah.
But we traded up to get him. We actually traded a 6th-round pick from next year to move up to draft him. And we traded, I think we were at like 223 or 230 or something. And we moved up at 215 to draft Zach Evans. And if you look at the board, what happened in round 6? Where's 215? So Deuce Vaughn went. Deuce Vaughn went 212. Deuce Vaughn's dad is a coach for the Cowboys. which was a player that the Rams met with. It was a player that the Rams had highly coveted. He's a little bit smaller of a player. I actually really like the Zach Evans pick over Deuce Vaughn. He's a really, really sleek and balanced runner, 5'11", 205, really, really athletic build. Tons and tons of lower body explosiveness. If you saw the clip that we shared, you could see all of the lower body explosiveness and just explosiveness in general in his run game. He's very, very nimble in terms of bursting in any direction. He can skillfully weave through traffic. And I feel like just his overall natural understanding of run angles is very much there. At his best, he's on a pitch, he's on a toss, he's getting into the second and third levels, he's getting outside of the tackles. So that outside zone scheme can still kind of be developed with somebody like Zach Evans, and somebody that can catch the ball really well on the move and can log that type of screen swing game production in college, I think is really, really important. He wasn't overly used because he was a little bit banged up. But in 320 touches, he consistently created chunk plays. Like every time, it's one of those guys, like you watch the tape, Nick, and you're like, every time this guy touches the ball, he's doing something. Averaged nearly 7.0 yards per carry and 11.0 yards per catch over his last 3 years at Ole Miss. So, I mean, you tell me, is that a player that we feel like we needed on this roster? Great value in the 6th round. Could be a Kyron Williams replacement.
I think
he was banged up last year. So
he's going to make an impact immediately. I think he's going to get the ball probably in the first game that they have this season. You've got Cam Akers now, and then immediately after, I think Zach Evans is going to be, RB2.
I do too. I have a sneaky suspicion about guys like Zach Evans and Puka Nacua.
Yeah. No, I mean, the fact that they traded up too, like they really felt like they wanted this guy, and they knew that people like he would be there at this point. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is somebody that's going to make an impact immediately. Truly.
Yeah, I mean, he got knocked out of a couple games last year, some injury concerns, but I think just in totality, in terms of what you're looking for from a running game, like it's a kind of player that, some Mike LaFleur could have helped in terms of scouting. They drafted Breece Hall last year in the 2nd round, and look how productive he was. So I trust the fact that they're now scouting running backs and, hopefully have a greater ability to hit on one outside of, the Darrell Hendersons and the Cam Akers and some of the other players that they drafted in the past. It doesn't necessarily seem like it worked out for them too well, but somebody with more value in the 6th round, I feel like moves the envelope in the right direction. And then Nick, round 6 wraps up. We're in round 7. And what do we do with our first pick in round 7, 223 overall?
Ethan Evans.
We draft a punter. A 238-pound punter, 6'4", 238 pounds.
Loved this. I was a huge fan. Just a massive build, just giant punter. Somebody that, I mean, last year I felt like our guy kept getting hit in the face with his punts. So yeah. I'm all about this.
Yeah, bigger, stronger. Right. It's like the Sebastian Janikowski of the punt game. Just somebody that's big and beefy and is going to be consistent for a long period of time and could potentially replace Johnny Hekker. So first pick of the 7th round, the Rams drafted a punter. He was also really pissed. Yeah, he was pissed. We shared that video yesterday. He was trying to get his hang time over 6 seconds. Ball was in the air for like 5.5 seconds. And he's like, damn, I got to get that up. Yeah, love that. Love that about the kid.
Yeah.
That's Ethan Evans. And then you go Jason Taylor, and then I'll take Dejuan Johnson, and that'll be a wrap for the Rams 2023 draft.
All right. Jason Taylor the 2nd. So his name is exactly the same as his father's. Well built with good length for his size, aggressive, working from the top down versus both the pass and the run. Plays with functional range and lower body explosion. 43-inch vertical. That's crazy. And second, that's second among all combine prospects. Above average instincts from the post or box. Anticipates well and trusts his visions to decisively break or crossers, in betweeners. His eye line, there's good balance between quarterback and route mid motion. Accounted for 19 passes defended and 8 interceptions over the past 2 seasons. Didn't commit a penalty in college. I mean, come on. That's fills inside and outside run lanes with conviction, faces up the ball carrier, and drives through his target as a tackler, which is what you want to see. Often a ton of experience, just a ton of experience on special teams. 536 snaps, So he'll play week 1 too, at least on special teams.
Yes, at least on special teams. Yeah, this could be your Jordan Fuller replacement, right? I mean, if Quentin Lake and Russ Yeast, you don't feel like they're strong enough on the back end, you want to add another player to that conversation. Jason Taylor seems like he has the best resume amongst those 3 players. If you go Yeast and Quentin Lake, and having a 4th, 5th round grade being selected in the 7th round is value. A lot of value late round, and that's why the Rams consistently traded back. And then we got Dejuan Johnson, round 7, 259 overall, Mr. Irrelevant. He's had some family stuff happen. I think there was a tryout where his dad was shot during the tryout or during the practice, tragically. So this is another guy that just has the want-to, has the know-how to be able to get the job done in the face of controversy and in the face of personal conflict. And I feel like in doing so, he ended up being a top defensive lineman in the MAC. He ranks 3rd in school history with 47 tackles for a loss. That's pretty impressive. He wins at the burst. His violent hands, his body control is really good. He uses that body control to be able to maneuver his frame through cracks on the offensive line. Like, this is another guy that's going to be competing. It's another guy that's going to be in rotation. You needed somebody outside of what you had on the interior defensive lineman. Ashawn and Greg Gaines are gone. Can't just be Jonah Williams up there in the front. You need some rotation with Dejuan and some other players that you drafted with Kobe. So lacking ideal size, man, that seems like it's a pretty consistent thing with the Rams over the last 10 years in terms of drafting defensive linemen who are a little bit undersized, but quick off the ball. He can shoot gaps. He's disruptive in the backfield. He plays in rhythm. He plays with violence. And he was Mr. Irrelevant. So get the same kind of value out of what the Niners got out of Brock Purdy last year, hopefully. Yeah. And what others have gotten out of Mr. Irrelevant in the past. So.
Yeah. And then after the draft was over, the Rams were like, well, we still have 32 roster spots to fill. To work searching for far and wide through the undrafted free agent class. Here's who they signed thus far, 10 so far. Christian Sims, tight end, Bowling Green's Tanner Ingle, safety, NC State. Kalichi Analebechi, linebacker. Tyron Davis, DB. Tyron Evans, running back. Christopher Dune, kicker. Jordan Jones, DB. Jaden Woodby, LB. Alex Ward, LS. Xavier Smith, wide receiver.
Yep. So we got a long snapper out of Alex Ward from Central Florida. So obviously Ethan Evans is your punter. You got your long snapper and Alex Ward. You signed a kicker and Christopher Dunn. You got some more depth in terms of defensive back. You signed 2 of those. You got another running back. You got some linebacker depth and safety depth. You got another backup tight end. So you got a lot of good players that could fill roles in terms of special teams. Xavier Smith, apparently, from the wide receiver from FAMU, is somebody that we need to keep an eye on. Somebody that we really need to focus on in terms of being a player that's undrafted that could potentially make the roster in the form of a Lance McCutcheon type player. So we'll have our eyes on the undrafted players. We'll continue to preview them throughout this process. But it's been a long draft weekend. I'm happy that we can wrap it up. I'm happy we can tie a bow on it. Do you want there to be an official grade for this draft class, Nick? If I were to give them anything, I would probably go B.
Yeah,
plus.
that was good.
Somewhere that's really solid, that is a foundational grade that you'll get by with. And I think this is a crapshoot. That's what the draft is. It's a crapshoot. Yeah, it's a bunch of lottery picks, and you have to just be able to kind of stockpile it with as many decent names as you possibly can and hope that you can develop these players into bona fide starters or just at the very least contributors on all 3 phases. So you got to be complementary. You got to be able to play defense. You got to be able to be consistent with your offense and not put the game in the hands of your defense consistently like they have. Special teams needs to be better. And they're kind of checking off all these boxes as we go, Nick. So if you guys enjoyed this draft coverage, make sure to like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Be a part of the movement. If you followed along with the big board, make sure to comment in this episode and let us know that you were a part of the fun. But that's what we got, Nick. That's our draft analysis for today.
Bet online, live betting, free contests, giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports events, whether that's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, or even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use our promo code BLEAV. Receive your rewards. Bet online, where the game starts. Please like and subscribe. It means so much to us. We want to have this channel be a big deal into the season. Go to games and tailgates and have fun with everybody. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Seriously,
We appreciate you guys.
A lot of hard
Yeah,
work.
go Rams. It's going to be a fun season. You got a lot of new names, a lot of new players to follow, and we'll be here breaking you all the news.
Yeah.
All righty. Go Rams.
Peace out, guys.